Another week, another NHL update video I can talk and speculate about, but it seems like this one has more weight to it actually being true, as the commissioner of the National Hockey League, Gary Bettman, has pointed out the idea that the NHL could return in July here, with practice team facilities possibly opening up at the start of June here, which is definitely somewhat encouraging to hear that, as the NHL all along here, as when the pause button was pressed on the 2019-20 NHL regular season with the developing and now ongoing situation with the COVID-19 and the coronavirus. Especially was prompted when one player in the NBA tested positive, and then there's been a few players both in the NBA and actually in the NHL ranks here that have tested positive for COVID-19. That players have been in self-quarantine. Likely it'll get extended until at least the middle of May here, because it kept getting pushed from end of March, middle of April, end of April here. But it sounds like there's more concrete plan. And then it's just follow-up to my other videos, but it does not sound like that Grand Forks, North Dakota, or Manchester, New Hampshire, or even Saskatoon, Saskatchewan could potentially host some NHL games in empty arenas here, because Gary Bettman mentioned, and I'll put the story in the description there as I'm kind of just paraphrasing here, that he intends to have NHL action in empty arenas in select NHL cities here for a few reasons. I mean, one, the plan is that it will be in empty arenas here. That kind of was the original plan, as the situation always changes here, that some cities could host NHL hockey here, that they could play 3 games in a day to wrap up the regular season and then have playoffs here. And it was originally speculated that certain arenas would host NHL hockey based on division here, which definitely could work out, especially towards the end of the regular season when you're playing more of your divisional teams here. And then at least in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs here, you have it in your divisional bracket there, so you can somehow figure that out, especially with travel here. And there's still travel restrictions between the Canada and U.S. border, and some players actually were allowed to go home to Europe when they had to self-quarantine and isolate there during this whole situation with the COVID-19 here. But it's definitely encouraging to hear that there is talk about actually resuming play here. That it sounds like, because I did see some tweets on the internet here, and tell you here from a very, very credible source here, but some speculation out there that, as I mentioned earlier, that team facilities could open in June here, as the beginning of June here. Because keep in mind here that I think it was March 12th, the exact date, when the pause button was pressed here, and I believe it was March 8th for the Calgary Flames, when we lost that game to the Vegas Golden Knights there on International Women's Day there. That was the last game that the Calgary Flames played. So we're up to 3 months that players have not played here. I mean, there's going to need to be some kind of training camp, or I don't know if they can have some kind of exhibition just to get everyone into game shape again. I mean, it's one thing to be in shape physically here, but it's getting your game shape again and get your timing and all your mechanics in. But still, definitely is somewhat encouraging that we will hear more developments that NHL could be coming back here. And I know that actually there's word that the commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman, actually will talk to our premier in Alberta, Jason Kenney, on potentially, maybe. And it does make sense with some of these NHL cities here to host NHL hockey here, because it's going to have to be a very, very controlled environment with players, teams, personnel, Zamboni drivers, maybe Dave Ayers, in case if you need an emergency goalie backup in a game in an empty arena. They're all going to have to be controlled, where it's go to arena, go to hotel, go to arena, go to hotel, be secluded away with this ongoing situation here, so you're not spreading the virus like wildfire. And that's one of the reasons why big gatherings and events have been canceled in various cities here, and that's why they're going to be playing in front of empty fans here, because big massive gatherings here. But it'd be interesting to see how the players would interact with each other too, with this ongoing, because the players are definitely all going to be monitored too, as well as everyone. But it'd still be nice to finally get some action here, and the reason why NHL arenas are now considered again, as opposed to some of these smaller college arenas in smaller cities here, is because you can have several locker rooms, so you can separate. So you can have, 3 games per day to wrap up the regular season. It's just going to be interesting how they would still do it, and I'll make follow-up videos on if, let's say, for example, the Calgary Flames had 12 games left in the 2019-20 regular season here, and they had some teams, because they had an Eastern road swing that they were going to go, where they're going to go off to New York there. Well, let's just say Edmonton hosts the Pacific Division teams. Well, how's Calgary going to... There'll have to be some kind of travel, or maybe they're able to bypass or have their charter planes to go to Atlantic or Metropolitan Arena to play those games. And then we were going to host some games against some Eastern Conference teams in the Pacific, and then wrap it up with the Pacific. And I mean, those things I think still need to be figured out here. But another thing that the NHL did contemplate was still having the draft in June, as traditional here. It's definitely not going to be, in an arena. And in Quebec, I believe, also has a similar ban that the city of Calgary just put in, that all bans events and gatherings and sporting events till the end of August there. It's not going to be, everyone's going to be in the Bell Center there, and then draft everyone. It's all going to be electronically. I know the NFL draft is doing that right now, but there's definitely a lot of logistics on, let's say, if the draft happened before hockey returns in July here, to wrap up the regular season and have playoffs and then eventually award the Stanley Cup here. Well, there's a lot of trades. I know there's 2 trades in particular. Just for example, the Calgary Flames, that there were ways on conditions. As, I'm still hoping for James Neal to give us 2 more goals. And I don't think Neal and Lucic will get close to Neal in goals, that we could still get a 3rd round pick from the Edmonton Oilers. That was conditional. That's that one trade there. And the Chicago Blackhawks, they're waiting on what 3rd round pick they're going to get from the Calgary Flames when we acquired Eric Gustafsson here, because the 3rd round pick was conditional on which pick happens first. It could be our own, or it could be that Oilers pick that we could get from Edmonton in the Neal and Lucic and James Neal trade here. But I also know that a lot of these trades that were made, especially the deadline, kept in mind about playoffs this year. And I believe there was one condition when the Ottawa Senators traded Jean-Gabriel Pageau to the New York Islanders there. I think there was a conditional pick, and I believe it was a 1st round pick that the Ottawa Senators could get if the New York Islanders win the Stanley Cup this year in 2020 there. I mean, those kind of conditions where you have players that say, if he plays in X number of games and this team makes it to the conference championship, you'll get this pick. Or if it's a bigger player, say, if this team goes to the finals, you get a higher pick. I mean, it's definitely going to be a nightmare to figure all that out. If they were going to have the draft in June before resuming play. And also the fact of how the heck are you going to seed the teams based on, because they kind of do that reverse order, the lottery, and then they figure out the seeding as the playoffs go on. And then ultimately the team that wins the Stanley Cup gets the final pick in the 1st round there. Well, how are you going to figure all that out if we haven't had a season and concluded where teams finish and, decide how the playoffs play out? That's definitely something you figure out here. I think there's too much pushback, because I don't think general managers are going to agree on that, especially when they plan on making these trades, especially if you loaded up at the deadline or sold at the deadline for this year. I mean, some ideas I read on there was, could they could defer it to next year. Well, that may or may not work, because you might also have trades that you made that considered next year with picks and that too. So I don't think the draft is going to happen in June. I'm just going to put it out there, just because of just be too much extra logistics you have to work out. I mean, we're not in ideal normal circumstances, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see how we're going to finish the season and playoffs here. And are they going to be best of 7 series? That's something we don't know yet. And then, but I'd definitely still be fine with hockey in the summer here, because if you watched my video where I talked about, well, sadly, the Calgary Stampede has been canceled here, and all events and gatherings in Calgary has been canceled up until the end of August here, and that includes sporting events here, and that includes my football team, the Calgary Stampeders here. It's going to be a lean summer, and if I have NHL hockey back, and who knows, MLB is still talking about possibly having games in empty ballparks in Arizona or Florida. I mean, I know South Korea is one example you can look at, as they have started their baseball season exhibition and get games in. And I remember reading in South Korea, their baseball league, that their season started a month later, but they play 144 games in their season there, and they thought about possibly maybe crunching the playoffs a little bit, where it's at their best of 5s and 3s here. So that's something that still remains to be seen with the Stanley Cup playoffs here. And then also all those proposals about maybe 24 teams could make the playoffs, or because there's those proposals that you can try out now in the NHL about expanding the seating to have mini playoffs to play in. And also, now that if they're leaning towards playing in empty arenas here, it can also, I think this would be the perfect time to also try out some of those gimmicks that you do at the All-Star game to help present the product to the viewer. Especially if, me as fans, we're not going to be able to go to the games for a while until, more of this gets figured out. How to manage it, I mean, if there's any treatments or a vaccine here, and obviously it also take time, for everyone to feel right and normal to go back into big crowds again. But it's still encouraging to hear that there's some NHL talk about actually playing games, because some people say, well, I'm just damn canceled already here. I'm totally fine with what they're doing. If I'm hearing that there's word out there that team facilities might start opening up in June so players can get back into game shape here, and some injuries could recover from, Flames will definitely have extra depth on defensemen now, because maybe Yusuf Valimaki, remember him? Yeah, he might be healthy. Maybe we'll get Yusuf Valimaki in for the stretch drive in under unusual circumstances and a playoff run here. Who knows? And maybe there's a lot of players that, because there was Max Pacioretty at the Vegas Golden Knights that said this could be the best playoffs ever. And I think Mark Giordano also said it'd be very intriguing to know that players won't be tired. They'll be extra hungry and healthy here. That it'll be an interesting playoffs, very intensive playoffs here. However, the one thing the TV networks are definitely going to have to maybe expand the delay. Because I did watch, going back to the South Korea and the empty baseball fields there, I saw some clips there. It just sounded like, a bunch of guys on a community ballpark playing baseball, chanting, yelling. I can only imagine, once everyone gets in their game face, the colorful things that could be said there. So that could be something that TV networks will have to figure out here. But it's just going to be interesting how they're going to interact with players. What extra protective equipment they could wear because of this. But it would definitely be nice to have hockey back here. But, I mean, what do you think of all these proposals that you've been hearing out there? That it sounds like it's going to go back to what we originally speculated, that NHL cities will host games and have sheets of ice and play several games per day to get the season in, and then have playoffs here. And then, obviously it also works better in bigger cities too, because you can likely, the arena's near big hotels here, and definitely could help out these hotels too if you have certain teams stay at this place and that place, and but there's still a lot of things to figure out, and I'll make follow-up videos here. So what do you think here? I'm definitely glad that there's still maybe some hope hockey to be back here, and also the fact that slowly we're hearing some jurisdictions, some states, some provinces might even start talking about slowly opening up here to slowly integrate us back into society here. It almost sounds like we're prisoners here. We can't let them in right away because that could backfire. It's slowly integrating everyone into society here, but yeah, it just is what it is here. So as I say here, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do Calgary sports as a sports fan here, talk about stories and games here, and based on this video here and what I've been reading and seeing online here, I might be having some more games and stories to talk about here in the next few months here. But I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences when I'm on the road or at a sporting event here, but I don't think I'm going to be doing any of those activities anytime soon here, but I'd still be fine with having some games in the meantime before they make it safe for us fans to attend gatherings and games again. And it'll definitely be great whenever we get to do that again here. But that's all I post on my channel here, so if that sounds like you'll be interested in, do follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey. And you know what you need to do, just make sure you hit like, subscribe here. I also have my other social media links down in the description below there. Sometimes I tweet out or post any Instagram about any future videos that I might do here, and there's one series that I'm thinking about working on where I might talk about, where it's in the plans right now, where I'll talk about Calgary sports teams from the past year. So watch for that there, and I'll put those announcements on there and when I plan to do those videos and when I release them here. So as I say here, so go Flames go, and I'll see you in the next video here, and hopefully we're all still doing our part to stay safe and social distancing. That's why I've been making a few more videos on the weekend here, because what else am I going to do on the weekend right now? And I need to take my mind away off from work and uncertainty and all the other, you know what, that's going out there right now. So I'll see you then.